Many noted scholars and commentaries argue that Psalm chapter 2 verse 7 should be understood in reference to Jesus' resurrection and not his birth. This is due to early mistranslations of Acts 13 verse 33, which should read, God has fulfilled this promise to those of us who are the descendants by raising Jesus, as it is also written in the second psalm, you are my son, today I have fathered you, or begotten you. Some translations misunderstand this verse as a second reference, the first being at verse 30, to Jesus having been raised up from the dead, but the text does not say that. The King James Version of 1611 went so far as to add the word again in verse 33, and some modern translations even add the phrase from the dead. Most of these are so-called paraphrases of the Bible, like the Expanded Bible, J.B. Phillips' New Testament, the Message, New Century Version, and the New Life Version. Note that the same phrase, raised up, is used of David earlier in Acts 13, verse 22, where God says that after he removed Saul, he raised up David as their king. This is the same phrase that is later used in verse 33. God is said to have raised up his son onto the scene of history, as it were, just as it was said of King David in Acts 13, verse 22. Also, note that the very next verse, 34, and as for the fact that he raised him from the dead, Paul goes on to quote another Old Testament verse to make a different point. The Popular Vine's Expository Dictionary of the New Testament notes that the Greek word translated raise, that is up, in Acts 13 verse 33, can be used of raising up a person to occupy a place in the midst of a nation, said of Christ in Acts 3 verse 26, Acts 7 verse 37, and Acts 13 verse 33. According to the received version, raised up Jesus, not here by resurrection from the dead, as the superfluous again of the King James Version would suggest. This is confirmed by the latter part of the verse, which explains the raising up as being by way of his incarnation, in other words, the virgin birth of Jesus, and by the contrast in Acts 13, verse 34, where stress is laid upon his being raised from the dead, the same verb being used. So even though the word can be used in reference to being raised up from the dead, the context dictates the meaning of the expression in Acts chapter 13. This is in complete harmony with the writer's use of Psalm 2:7 as the begetting, that is, the procreation of the Son from the womb and not from the tomb.